What do I do if I don't have enough experience? What if I'm underqualified for a job? In this video, we're going to talk about what to do if you don't have enough experience. This is the experience cheat code because this doesn't mean that it's game over for you. There are ways to show experience even if you might not have too much experience in the industry. First off, what if you are underqualified for a job? You're looking at a job application and you're saying to yourself, no way, I am not qualified for this job. Well, first of all, you should have this mentality in mind when applying to jobs. Remember the law, don't be a junior? You should be applying to jobs that you feel are underqualified for. That means you should be applying to jobs that are hard, that you think are tough. If a job is asking you to do something that you already know, that you already feel confident in, then you should be asking yourself, what am I going to learn on this job if I'm already good at everything that they list? Am I actually going to learn on this job? Is this job going to put things on my resume that will make me get better, to be in a better position, to get promoted in the future? Or am I just doing this simple job, the same thing that I already know what to do? So you have to and you should be applying to jobs that you think are really, really tough, because those are the jobs that help you grow. And finally, you have to keep in mind that job postings are put in order to weed out the weak candidates. People put way more years of experience than the job actually requires just to make sure that they don't get any junior, weak candidates. I have seen way too many of these job applications created by non-technical or just human resources people, just making the job sound tougher than it actually is to remove these weak-minded people from applying because they get thousands of applications. So next time you see an application and you think, oh boy, I'm never going to get this job. Well, that's a tough job, and that's what you want. That's what you should be applying to. Because if you look at a job application and you feel confident you are qualified for this job, then maybe you should be asking yourself if you should be applying to more difficult jobs. Because, if you don't try, the answer is always no. Every application should be a long shot. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong. Remember, you're not swimming with others. You're your own fish carving your own way. You want room to grow. You want to dream big. All right, but let's be honest. There's a bit of a problem here, right? You want to dream big, but you might have a bit of a roadblock. What if you simply don't have enough experience? What if you're actually just starting in this industry or in your field? You see, I don't love resumes, and I don't think a lot of people do either. But sometimes, without a resume, you cannot really get an interview. And in order to have a good resume, you need to have something to put on the resume, like great experience. Here's the catch, though. How can you have great experience if you're just getting started? It's like you have no hope if you're a beginner, right? Or if you don't have work experience because you can't get a job, what are you supposed to do? Maybe you're just out of school, just graduated, or you're changing careers and you literally have zero experience. Well, not quite. As with everything in this course, there's a regular way of doing things that everybody else follows. Then there's the smart way, the unique way that we're going to do. Remember, we're not swimming with others. We're our own fish. You see, experience doesn't just come from working at another company. There are many ways they can demonstrate experience without a past job experience. And here you'll find my favorite ways to showcase and to prove you can get the job done to employers. Now, you won't have to do every single one of these, but 2 out of 5, or even better, 3 out of 5 of these will be great at showcasing on your resume and making you stand out. So let's go in order. through these and see how we can add experience using these tools. First, let's talk about LinkedIn. Now, we have a whole section on LinkedIn, so this is just a brief overview, but on LinkedIn, you can demonstrate experience by just simply showing all the things you've done. I'm going to leave my profile for you so you can actually take a look, but if you look at my experience through my years, I have the most random experience. I was a tennis club manager. I was teaching English in Japan. I was a salesperson. I was a tour director. I started a adventure racing company. I did sailing trips. I even have my yoga instructor certificate. You see, these are all kind of random, but they show me doing things and swimming on my own path, showing my unique skills that I'm stacking. And on LinkedIn, there's interesting things you can do like endorsing skills. As a matter of fact, you can have other people endorse your skills that you want and recommend you on your LinkedIn profile. And you can use these to bolster your LinkedIn profile. Again, we'll talk about this in the LinkedIn section. But we actually have a ZTM Academy group where you can actually share endorsements with each other and promote your blogs, your articles, get recommendations from other ZTM students as a way to bolster your LinkedIn and also showcase some other things that we're going to talk about later. All right, but that's just LinkedIn. You've bolstered a bit of your LinkedIn profile. You have some endorsements, some recommendations. Maybe you write a couple of posts, which we'll talk about on LinkedIn. What about GitHub? Well, GitHub, I've already shown you how to use it to create a simple portfolio website, but it's actually a great tool for gaining experience. You see, GitHub is a great way to demonstrate that not only do you code, but you work on projects with others. So it's not just for programmers. You can be a designer, you can be a writer. You can use GitHub because GitHub allows all sorts of files to be uploaded and shared. You can load PDFs, images, designs, and others. But for experience, the number one thing you can do with GitHub is to start making what's called commits and making sure that you have a good history of things that you've done. You see, this is your Git history. This shows possible recruiters your activity on GitHub. And the longer this history is, the more experience, or at least the more experience it looks like you have. This essentially tracks your activity on GitHub. So if you're doing something every single day on GitHub, putting up code, putting up projects, this will be filled with green. And by the way, there's some unique tricks to make it look like you're way more active than you are. For example, you can use some of these tools, which I'm going to share with you after this video, to make cool little GitHub commits that look like this, that actually makes you stand out. And some recruiters are going to stumble over it and say, wow, that's kind of funny, kind of cool how they have that. Again, you're standing out from the crowd. Another way to use GitHub for experience is contributing and participating in what's called open source projects. For example, I've created a Zero to Mastery organization where we have a ton of open source projects that are built by the student community and that you can contribute to. And they're made specifically for you to mess up, make mistakes, get experience. Nobody's going to yell at you if you make a mistake on one of these projects. These are just fun projects that are open source that you can contribute to and eventually actually add to your resume. And you can do as much or as little as you want with these open source projects. You can update a simple text README file, you can add designs, you can change code. And contributing to open source projects, well, recruiters love seeing this because this demonstrates that you can work with others and also with things like GitHub and version control and working on actual projects. And ZTM has community events throughout the year. For example, we have Hacktoberfest in October, where we work on open source projects like Animation Nation where students just share some of their animations with the community. My favorite one that students have built, and this happened just this year, is ZTM Quest. They've literally made a game. That's right, a ZTM game where you can just walk around like you're playing Game Boy. How cool is that? And this was built by students. And you can work on this project if you want and add it to your portfolio, or at least add it to your experience. The next one is portfolio website. And as I've shown you in the previous video when we did a simple portfolio website, you don't need to be a full stack developer or a designer to have your own website. The idea is that a portfolio website is something you build to showcase your big projects, which we talk about in the next point, 1 to 2 big projects. So portfolio website is an online presence that already makes you stand out because that's your experience. You put something online, and inside it, you're going to have 1 to 2 big projects that are what I call wow projects that are going to impress employers and interviewers. And the idea of these projects in your portfolio is that they're going to be set up in a way that it's something that you're going to be able to speak about in your interview, about how you built the website, how you built the projects. And it gives you a good way to talk about your past experiences building these projects. But here's the problem. How do you build these big projects? Well, first off, the good news is that you only need 1 to 2 big projects. Now, you can't really fake experience. If you've never built anything beyond a simple to-do list, a hello world, just something basic that you can find on YouTube, you're not going to get good jobs. When I talk about 1 to 2 big projects, I mean big, impressive projects. The problem is that when people think about learning, they think about building 100 projects as they learn. So they do a project today, build a small project that's not really impressive, a simple calculator, a simple tic-tac-toe app. They build very, very simple projects. And when a recruiter sees this, you look like any other candidate. It's not really impressive. It's something that anybody can build in a day or two. And frankly, no recruiter is going to read your entire portfolio, go through all your 30 projects. They don't have time for that, and they don't care about you. Most of the time, they want to hear about your most difficult, the hardest, the biggest project you worked on. And here is where ZTM comes in. We're actually focused on helping you build these big projects in every course that you do. For example, this is one of my favorites. In the Three.js course, which is right over here, we actually teach you to build this, which can actually turn into your portfolio if you want to. You have a little player, this 3D player that you walk around, and look at that. You can say, hey, this is my portfolio. And as you walk along, you have all your projects listed here. How cool is that? In the Unity course, for example, we help you build a real-life game that you can play and demonstrate to your employers. These are big projects that most people wouldn't build because it takes days to build them. In my own course, where I teach you to become a full-stack developer, we build a face recognition app. And this app, well, it has a front end using React, back end using a RESTful API server with Express. We deploy to production. We create session management, authenticated routes. We store user information and username and hash passwords in a secure database using Postgres. We deploy our app with Docker, and we use Redis for session management and caching. Now, all of that may not mean a lot to you, but having something like a one big project that you can talk about, like I just did, sounds really impressive to employers. Each of our courses creates one of these 1 to 2 big projects, but we also have a special section under the project format where you can build a ton of really cool projects that are what we call wow projects. These are the sort of projects that most people won't build. It'll take you a long time to build them, but once you build them, you have 1 or 2 of these on your resume, and it's going to really blow employers' minds. If I had no experience, I would immediately put one of these projects at the very top of my resume. Because here's the thing, if you don't have work experience, for your work experience, you just simply put this project, let's call the project the SmartBrain app that you've built. You put that as a title, and your job description was JavaScript developer or a full stack engineer. And inside the resume, you talk about how you built that project. Because to a recruiter, it doesn't really matter if you worked at a certain company. At least when they first glance at your resume, building an application on your own is what's impressive. They couldn't care less about the company that you worked at, unless it's a big, well-known company. They just need to know that you built things that are real, that are big and complicated, and that you solved hard problems. So having one or two big projects that you can list on your experience is a great way to add to your resume if you don't have enough past work experience at companies. And I actually have a few students who have used this technique to get interviews, even though they just learned how to code 6 months ago. All right, final point, because this video is getting long. And this is a blog. This is another thing you can include in your resume, especially if it's related to a technology or a skill you're using and the company you're applying for is using. Now, you can do this with YouTube videos as well, but I prefer writing because it's a lot faster and, frankly, it looks a lot more professional. Writing technical blog posts, you can use AI tools to help you write. You can brainstorm ideas, then use an AI tool like Claude or ChatGPT to help you write a technical blog post that you can put on your portfolio. And you can put this blog post on LinkedIn. You can put this blog post on your website. You can even post it on GitHub. But having this blog that you write can actually be an item on your resume, that you maintain this technical blog where you write topics about your skill. They don't need to know how many readers your blog has, but the fact that you've started a blog on this specific skill that they need, that's impressive. And that's experience. So let's review here. What happens if you don't have enough experience? Well, all of these points will allow you to gain that experience, or at least show that you have experience without actually having traditional company work experience. All you need to do is start something on your own and build something like a project or a portfolio or a blog post. This shows initiative, and let's be honest, the whole goal is to get an interview, because all of this is to get an interview. The whole point of this section is to get that interview, because once we get in the door, once we get the interview, we're going to ace it because of the upcoming section on interviews. By taking this initiative, you're doing more than most people that hope to just land an interview by sending a generic resume to hundreds and thousands of companies just by simply clicking a couple of buttons. You'll immediately stand out from the crowd and give you something to put on your resume that, again, is different than the average person. Plus, you have the added benefit of having something to talk about on your actual interview. Remember, nothing is given to you for free, and luck is for those who rather wait than go after what they want. Don't depend on luck, because luck is exactly that, a gamble. So work hard for it. By simply building something just for fun, such as a side project, you're showing how self-motivated and ambitious you are. Experience doesn't mean on-the-job experience. Experience means work. All of these things I've listed here answer this question: do you have experience? And if you do these, yes, you do. Finally, there are many things that you can add that are not specific to a technical skill that are still great for employers to see. For example, did you work as a cashier at McDonald's? Well, you can now add the ability to manage people and communicate well with others to your resume. That's a great skill. Any skill that is related to getting the job done can be included. But be warned here. If, let's say, for example, you only had 6 months of coding experience and you only learned to code 6 months ago because you want to apply to be a developer, as an example, Don't actually show that on the resume. It doesn't mean that you should lie, but to just hide that information. Because a recruiter only glances at your resume briefly. They won't care if you're the best developer in the world, even though it's just been 6 months. It's too risky for them. Your resume is most likely going to get discarded, no matter how good of a developer you are, if you just say, hey, I only have 6 months experience. If you don't have a lot of experience, don't emphasize how little time you spent. Instead, try to stretch that and be vague about how many years of experience you have. Remember, resumes are only good to get your foot in the door. By tweaking your resume to show that you have experience so that the recruiter thinks, oh, interviewing this person is low risk because they know what they're talking about is what you want to do. They want to know if you have past experience, if you've made good decisions in the past, have you worked on a challenging problem and solved them? If you're able to answer yes to that and show that on the resume, the recruiter is most likely going to ask you for an interview. Over the next couple of videos, we're going to talk about how to make all of these stand out so it looks like you have the best experience possible. So we still have a long way to go, and we'll keep emphasizing this point. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.